Hi, my name is Mark Cozza, and I wanted to thank you for asking me to participate in this event. I'm here to talk about the Fortress of Solitude and Jonathan Lethem and my experience designing it. I'm really proud of the cover, as well as the other covers I've done for him. Pay no attention. This woman is fine. She's not in any danger. I just keep her tied up in my studio. Nothing weird about that. So, back when I worked on the Fortress of Solitude, I was introduced to it by Umi Kenyon, who was an art director at Doubleday. And she and I had worked a lot on other covers, and she thought I would be the right person to work on this. I had not read Jonathan's work beforehand. I read the manuscript and I was blown away by it, and I was really excited to work on it. One of the reasons I was excited is because I knew the neighborhood really well. My brother lived in Borum Hill in the 80s. I lived in Park Slope in the mid-80s. And I had visited him a lot, and I could picture it pretty well in my mind. And I also could relate to the era, because in the 70s I was also kind of an adolescent, maybe a little older than Dylan, the character in the book. And I kind of understood that feeling of, black kids being cool, because in my town that's how I felt. And I always caught myself thinking, like, oh man, I wish I were black sometimes. I wish I could be as cool as that guy over there. And I think Dylan had some of those feelings, and if I remember correctly. I did create a few drafts for the book. Let's see. Some of them were variations on the theme that ended up being the cover. In fact, I did like those a lot. I think I liked them better than the actual one that was chosen to show by Umi and her crew, because they felt more raw and more rough. And if I put my head right here, the reflection from the window makes my eyes look really strange, like I'm going to shoot laser beams out of them. So I'm going to keep my head this way. No, I won't. So in the version that became the cover, I had also explored other ideas that had to do with graffiti and superheroes and things like that. But I felt like those were a little too literal and straightforward, and they just seemed superficial, and that the direction that was chosen was much more in line with the book, had more depth. And the reason I chose that theme, I was focusing on Dean Street in Brooklyn as kind of Dylan's safe place. He came back to there. When he came back there as a kid, he felt safe, and when he was older, he would come back there in his mind. He also would take solace there and would feel protected there. So I thought that as a microcosm for the book, I could create the feeling of looking down on this neighborhood. And at the same time, I thought, what if I created the buildings out of the type that were the title? It was like, what if? And I tried it a few different ways. As you can see, the more gritty ones were the ones I liked better. They had some graffiti tags on it and stuff like that. In the end, we chose a more quiet one. And I think in hindsight now that I look back 10 years on, 12 years on, that that was the right way to go, because I think it aged really well. And it is a lot more timeless than some of the other ideas might have been. I was thrilled that Jonathan liked the cover, that he chose the cover that was the favorite one. And at that point, I needed to get an illustrator to illustrate all the little people that were running around the buildings and the city bus and all that. So I had just moved to Portland, Oregon, and I was overseeing a crew of designers, and one of them was a very good designer and a very good illustrator named Rebecca Cohen. And Here's Rebecca.
Oh, hi.
Shh. Tell them where you're from, too. That was another bonus.
I had just moved here to Portland about a year before, also from New York. So I could also relate to the story and the settings. And even though it wasn't a very intricate illustration assignment, I wanted to get, the period details right of the 70s in New York. And what I drew upon mostly was Sesame Street. And, those classic early days of Sesame Street in the 70s that I grew up on. And a book that I had as a little girl called Edith and Little Bear Lend a Hand. And it was a photo illustrated book about a doll and a teddy bear that try and clean up the pollution in New York City in the early 70s. And it was just black and white photographs of this doll and this teddy bear. And it had all the old buses and the old trash cans and the street signs and the cars and the fashions. And whenever I think back to my childhood in New York in the 70s, I kind of see it through that lens of this gritty, black and white, kind of dirty, classic, to me, view of New York. So that's what I that was the lens I was looking through as I did the little teeny tiny illustrations. And it was a fun project, and it was also the first time that Mark and I really collaborated on something together.
Yep.
So it was the start of a beautiful relationship.
That's right. Oh my God. Okay. All right, so to continue on. So we have this amazing bookstore in Portland called Powell's, and when Jonathan was on his book tour for Fortress of Solitude, he came through here, and so we went down to meet him for the first time, even though we had worked on his cover. And after the reading, we went up to him, and he was very gracious and very appreciative, and it was a thrill to meet him. And we spoke a little bit about how thrilled we were that we could interpret the cover the way he wanted to, and we had him sign our books, of course, and he signed Rebecca's to the Master of Tiny People. And, he was just a really sweet person. Rebecca and I also got to design 2 other covers for Jonathan. I designed a third one, too, which was called Believe Nix, and it was written in his pen name, Harry Conklin. But the 2 other covers were Men in Cartoons and The Disappointment Artist, which was a book of essays. For Men in Cartoons, it was a book of short stories, and a lot of them had themes of kind of science fiction, superhero, farcical, funny, deep. A lot of different things going on there. But the title Men in Cartoons conjured up some thoughts, and Rebecca and I decided that we wanted to approach a direction of the comic book ads. Out of those beautiful, pulpy, old comic books, and when you blow them up, they look beautiful. So Rebecca kind of rendered this pepper gum guy from the pepper gum ad, and we blew him up for the front cover, and it was just this amazing image of a guy screaming with smoke coming out of his ears, and it really worked as an interpretation of the cover, as well as on the shelf it stood out. And then magically on the back, we encapsulated each story using a page of fake comic book ads. So the X-ray specs, the pepper gum, all of that stuff. And we asked Jonathan if he would write the blurbs for the stories, each description, and he obliged us, which was really sweet of him, to help advance the story. And I'm really proud of the way it turned out. That's actually probably my favorite cover. I'm not sure. I think that one was in 50 books, 50 covers. I think Fortress of Solitude was. Either one of them was in or both of them was. Anyway, that's something I'm really happy about. And then The Disappointment Artist was really just, reading it, taking the title into account, and finding this really good stock photo of a little boy holding an ice cream pop that's melting all over his hand. The Disappointment Artist. Pretty much kind of a sight gag. There's no reference to ice cream melting in the book, sorry. But I think it worked pretty well. was weird that it got on a list of one of the best covers last year. I don't understand why, but there you go. So there was no conscious effort to approach these covers differently. It was just kind of, what's this about? Let's think about it. Let's do it. It's really impossible to encapsulate a novel or a book of short stories all in the cover art. It's basically, my approach is to come up with an image that synthesizes with the title and gives the viewer a feeling of the nature of the book, or a feeling of one of the concepts of the book, kind of washes over them and just gives them that feeling, or it's provocative enough to make them look inside. All of the experiences with Jonathan were really, really good. I mean, there was no challenges, really. I mean, I've worked on a lot of covers where it just goes back and forth and gets very nitpicky, but we really got to do what we wanted, and Jonathan seemed open to it. And the only challenging aspect was when we were asked to work on a cover called You Don't Love Me Yet, and we had come up with a couple of drafts that we felt pretty good about, but they were rejected, and we were asked to use a photo of Jonathan on the cover, and we tried doing that, but we couldn't get it to work. And finally, the in-house Doubleday art department did it, and they ended up producing it, and that was kind of the end of the run with Jonathan. But it was a really nice run, and I'm really, really happy about it. I feel good about it, and the funny thing is, you know, Rebecca and I are an item now, which is not now. We're actually married, and we have a child. But we were an item at one point. Now we're just an old married couple. So, you know, did this have anything to do with it? I don't know. Did Jonathan have any responsibility in bringing us together? I don't know. You figure it out. Anyway, that's it. Enjoy the night. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.